Dasha is a vision doula, someone who helps you birth your craziest and wildest dreams into reality through different scientifically proven modalities, magic, and mysticism. At 30 years of age, she lives her purpose and adores her life. And she jumps out of bed with excitement every morning. She's a digital nomad that travels around the world, seeking out the most transformational, life-changing practices to bring back to her clients and her followers. Also, Dasha's been to over 55 countries, so she's really seasoned in her travels. After completing a double major in psychology at university, she embarked on a mysticism journey into shamanism and tantra. She then became a certified Tantric Approach Sex, Love, and Relationship coach, a woman's work facilitator, a yoga teacher, biodynamic trauma release breathwork facilitator, Somatic Embodiment Dance Facilitator, and a Universal Tao Instructor specializing in yoni eggs. Dasha has studied under many pioneers in wellness, spirituality, and psychology, and I am so excited to share this episode with you today, so let's just jump right in. I love that. That's a really good one. Good for grounding. I'm recording already.
Perfect. We entered the time portal, baby, where it just time is illusory, it doesn't exist.
Welcome to Openly Spoken, the podcast to help you show up, speak out, and be seen within your relationships, your work, and most importantly, with the relationship with yourself. In this podcast, we talk about all things self-love, relationships, sexuality, spirituality, and more. Hi, I'm your host, Celia Antonio, and I'm a women's sexuality and self-love coach, a mindfulness expert, and your cheerleader for your most grounded and expansive self-expression. You can connect with me on Instagram at self-expressedbabe, and for all of my guest episodes, there will always be links in the show notes so that you can find them online. I give my deepest thanks to you for being here and spending your precious time with me today. Now let's begin our journey. Okay, cool. We are recording. Yay, Dasha. I'm so excited to be here with you today. You look so playful today with your Mickey Mouse and your pink hair and your incredible earrings. I love it.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I feel very playful.
Yeah. Yay. So I know we're going to have a pre-recorded bio of yourself, but I would love to give you the mic to kind of introduce yourself to the listeners.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Hello, everyone. So excited to be here with you. Thank you for taking this time to listen to our beautiful episode that's going to be full of wisdom and goodness. My name is Dasha, and I call myself a Vision Doula. It is a term I coined I like to be unique and special. And I was like, what is it that I do? And you might have heard of a doula. And what I do is I help people with the birthing process, not of babies, like they're soul babies, not physical little humans, but they're soul babies. I help people birth their vision, mission, purpose into the world through scientifically proven methods. I have a background in psychology, neural, and social psych. And I combine it with magic and mysticism and all these superhuman abilities that we have, and help you like life hack through life, through business, through relationships. I also have been a wanderlust and addicted to travel from very young age because of my background. And I travel the world and I just like research the most incredible modalities and practitioners, and then I learn from them, and then I kind of simplify it and share it with the world. And today is a really important topic that's been like vibrating through my soul and my being.
Yes.
And yeah.
Oh my gosh. So where in the world are you right now?
For those that are watching the video, you may guess by seeing this carpet on on the wall. And one of my clients was like, I can tell you're still in Russia, the only country that puts carpets on walls. And I laughed so hard because I was like,
I was wondering, I'm like, we're supposed to know from the carpet. What's the carpet?
right? And I
And
was
why
like,
is it on the wall? I didn't even think of that.
I laughed so hard because I was like, oh yeah, that's not a normal thing, but it's a normal thing because that's what you do in Russia to decorate your walls and soundproof
So
them and
funny.
heat-proof them. And I don't know, it was a thing. And I never questioned it until that moment on a client call. I was like, oh yeah, that's hilarious.
Is it because it gets so cold? It's like extra insulation?
Honestly, I have no knowledge. If I was to say anything, me and mom talked about it. She told me it was like soundproofing and decoration
Okay.
but nothing backed up by anything. So we can Google it. If anyone knows, in the comments, please share.
Yes, please do. And then before we get into our topic, because you did share that you've traveled the world, I'm so curious to know what your favorite place is.
My number one place on earth is
Yeah.
Mexico.
Mexico?
I love Mexico. I have past lives from Mexico. I love the people. I love the culture. I love the food. I love the nature and the diversity. Oh my God, just but the food, and like when I used to drink alcohol, the best alcohols from there, and the people, like, oh yeah, number one.
Love it. Have you done the Vita retreat in Mexico?
I have not. No, I have not. I wanted to, but I had other
I think
things
I
and
just
then
got
other
the
things.
email for that.
Yeah,
I think there's one
yeah,
happening in September.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's near my birthday or something like that. But yeah, the dates don't line up. But I'm definitely going back there in probably October. Like there's also this deep like Mayan culture and lots of ruins. Oh, it's just magical place.
Okay. All right. So to dive into our topic of loving men, I'm so excited to hear your journey, and I'm curious to hear what maybe like a big shift was for you in how you relate to men. Like what changed? What knowing did you learn, or what practice did you experience where you were like, huh, okay. And like what was that moment?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it's like like just being like taking a snapshot of this moment that I'm doing a podcast about loving men. Like I'm like, who is this woman, right? It's like so far from who I was
Yeah.
even a few months ago, actually. It's like such a rapid
Nice.
journey. But I want to share from like way, 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 way back, because the more I deepen into my awakening, I guess, the more I get very esoteric, very woo, 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 and like maybe not so relatable. I don't know who your audience are. So I'm going to go like tone it back down to when I was less wild, less crazy, less woo woo. And the thing that changed everything, this was like the pivotal start to this journey, was I used to run a narrative, and I'm curious if anyone who's listening relates to this, or if you relate to this, Celia, if you ever experienced this or still maybe do. But I used to run a narrative that like there's no good men out there, and all men are assholes, and men are stupid. Yeah, so I used to live my life like that. And I was really into, I think at that point, maybe not so much, but already like manifesting and mindset. And then I remember sitting, having a chai. I was in India. I remember this so clearly, this moment, because it literally changed my life. We were sitting on the river Ganges, and I was talking to my friend,
Oh,
drinking this chai, and I said this really disempowering belief. And my friend was like, "Oh, really?"
that there are no good men out there?
Yeah,
That was the thing you said.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There's no good men. They're all stupid. They're all assholes. And she was like, "Really?" I'm literally just surrounded by the most kind, conscious men. And I was like,
Yeah.
wait a second. That is a belief and a reality you can have? And I was like, I'm taking that. I'm taking this. I'm taking this belief and I'm running with it. I'm like, I'm letting go of that old belief. And still to the day, I see single women bagging out men and how shitty they are and how they're everywhere, right? And I'm like, yo, you are creating this reality for yourself, because scientifically we only have so much capacity to process. Our brain naturally like looks for like quick like shortcuts and for confirmation bias, like scientifically proven confirmation bias is
There's a name for this as well. I forgot what it's called, where you like focus, like there are all these billions of things happening at once and our mind only focuses on a certain amount to save energy. I forget what the name for that is.
Yeah, and the same thing, right? The shortcut of the same thing to repeat the same pattern, right? The pattern that comes from what was created between 1 and 7, and goes back to your father, probably, most likely, 100%.
Yes. Yeah, we can't talk about this topic without talking about the father wound.
Yeah. So yeah, that was like the beginning, right? But then still I had all this societal conditioning of how women should be and how men should be. And I call myself a Rosie. I'm a Russian Australian, and like I am definitely a Russian Australian. Like I am half because I grew up from the age of 8 in Australia, and I'm 30 now, and I travel the world. But I have both cultures, very different cultures. So I can only speak from my point of view and from the people around me and my clients. But there's a strong conditioning in the West of women being independent and not needing men. And can do everything themselves and need to prove it. And need to be in competition. And if men, it's just like competing with men. And I guess like that's how I live my life. And until recently, I don't remember what the pivotal moment was. I think I broke up with my ex, and I think I was like, I want to call in my king, maybe something along those lines. And then I was like, I don't understand men. And actually, I think I'm scared of them. And actually, I think I secretly hate them. Like I don't know where this information came. I can't remember. I can't pinpoint you the moment. But there was a moment where I realized all this, and I was like, oh shit, this is how I'm operating in the world, and this is the people that I'm either magnetizing to myself, or I'm just projecting this onto them, and they have no hope because I cannot see through this lens of beliefs that I'm running, which again goes back to our fathers, most likely, or absence of our father figure. And I was like, okay, I honestly can't remember what it was. I work a lot with intuition and knowing, and maybe it was something like that. But I was like, I want to heal this, and I want to be able to love men. I don't want to be scared of men. And I don't even have this thing where like nothing bad's ever happened to me. I've dived into this and I'm like, where does this hatred come from? Like no one's ever hurt me this lifetime. I know previous lifetimes, this for me it's a previous lifetime thing. But nothing like no trauma, nothing that major. And so I was like, okay, I want to do this. And I was going to this shamanic tantric retreat where I knew that there is a masculine, feminine kind of journey. And that was the intro. I've done it before. I was assisting it. And I was like, okay, that's my intention. There was a lead. The lead was a man. And I was like, I want to assist this retreat. And I want to understand men. And I want to heal men, like my wound around men. And it sparked something, and it started this process. And there was a practice where men got to share about their childhood and their upbringing. And there was this moment where this man was sharing about being really, as a child, really, really scared. Like something really bad happened or painful, and all he wanted to do was just cry. He just wanted to cry, but he wasn't allowed to. he was told to man up, to shut up, and I remember sitting there and just listening to that and being like even now as I share it, I feel the goosebumps and I'm kind of losing my breath because I'm like, whoa, I never realized the impact of that.
Yeah. Little boys are not really encouraged to feel, to cry specifically. And crying is such a release. So, like, imagining that impact of just like holding that in all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And then women, again, I'm really going to stereotype things. So please, this is stereotypes. But women don't believe that men can feel anything, right? They're like, men don't feel. And I have like evidence because I'm running this book club. I'll talk about it in a second. But there we're talking about the whole theme is loving men, understanding men. And the chapter we're on right now is around sex. And I have men in the book club, which is such a gift. And there's women sharing like, oh, I was talking about how men experience sex. And there's women that's sharing like, oh, I didn't even know men could feel this much. And me personally, I was so called out by this because there's a man sharing in my group, not just the book, in my group. And I'm still like, no, this is not true. Like, this is not true. I don't believe it. It's like, I don't believe it. And maybe some women who are listening to this don't relate to that, but a lot of women don't believe.
Do you remember what it was that it was saying?
It was talking about, so in this chapter, it asks a woman and a man what they feel like, or what sex provides for them.
Okay.
And the man talks about how like it's such a spiritual journey, it's such a sensual journey, it's like, yeah, just so many layers to it, right?
Yeah.
It's a good question to ponder.
I can see why, you know, we'd be like, wait, what? Men feel that?
Right? So they're conditioned not to cry, and then they're shamed by women and told, oh, you can't feel anything, though they have been conditioned from a young age not to feel. Yeah, because they're not supposed to feel. So you're like, oh, you don't feel because you're not supposed to feel.
And then a very few sliver of men, though, do come from families that encourage them to cry and to feel. And then they have a hard time in school. I know 2 people in my family who have had that experience. Like, they have a hard time in school because they're picked on for their feelings. And feelings should not be gendered. Feelings are human. And it's interesting how we have these boxes of like, this is for boys, this is for girls. And like, who made up the boxes, first of all? Because we need to make up that box for ourselves. We need to make our own definition. But we're like trying to fit into these boxes from such a young age, and it's just like suppressing expressing who we really are and being who we really are.
Yeah, and then turns into this disease, and then like chronic illness because it's this energy is stagnant and not moving in both genders, right? And all people. Yeah, and yeah, so that was the journey. And also, oh yeah, our mentor, Layla Martin, she started talking about a book that changed her life. Yeah, her dating life. And she openly started talking about the Queen's Code. And she interviewed Alison Armstrong. And I've heard about this book many, 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 many times. And it just wasn't a priority because I didn't give a shit about men, right? I was just like, okay, whatever. Yeah. And then it became a priority. I was like, okay, I don't know, this is time. And it's funny because this is my book club book. And it's funny because it's more than a book. It's like a freaking soul initiation, and you need to be ready for it. And not everyone is. You know, not everyone is, and it's been really interesting. So many people have reached out, and then it's like they haven't made it a priority. But those that have, it's been like, and this is a really big part of my journey, reading that book and starting to understand men. And for me, I didn't grow up with men. I grew up with my mom and my grandma, and I didn't know that men thought differently till I was like 27, and I traveled with my boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, in a van for 5 weeks, and I realized that men weren't stupid. They just I literally thought men were stupid up to the age of 27.
Oh no.
Yeah, I just was like, wow, why are you so dumb? And like, and I comment this right in my socials, because when I was promoting this book club, I was curious what women thought, and people like, women were like, but they are like, people like, there people still have these strong beliefs, and I know it's funny, but it's like, it's real, because there's such a miscommunication and misunderstanding, right? And men think women are like crazy and irrational, right? Because of the miscommunication. There's these stereotypes that both genders believe, and we're talking really like binary, and very stereo, right? Everyone, there's always sides, right? But like, we're just talking about very stereotypical. And yeah, so I was like, okay, let me try and learn about men and understand them. And yeah, that book was super life-changing for me. And then I was like, this can't be true. Yeah, I have this kind of, this is the way I learn. I'm like always skeptical. You know, I'm like, I don't think so. So I was like, I need proof. Like, I need to do my own research with men. And then I was like, I want to do a book club, because I want to share this, like talk about this with other people, because it's
the conversations,
such important, like, just you know. And I was like, no one talks about it, right? Like, there's a huge narrative that men are shit. There's a huge thing of like emasculating men, to feel more empowered, to feel safe, to protect ourselves, right? And this whole book is like opposite of that. So it's like, how can you create a community where like you can talk about loving men and not be like looked at like you're betraying our sisterhood.
I think that's so important, because you know, the last maybe 10-ish years, there's been such huge strides and shifts in the realm of like female empowerment and women's empowerment and feminism. And I think where feminism really misses the mark is when it basically does the same thing as patriarchy and like puts women above men and says that men are the problem, and it's just like bashing men. And it's like, are we forgetting that like we all have dads? I mean, unless you're raised by two moms, most of us, the majority of us, we at least have a dad because we exist. And when we're bashing all men, we're bashing like essentially ourselves, because we came from a man. Most of us, again, generalizing.
And this is what's been really eye-opening, running this book club and having these kind of conversations that I normally didn't, is the reality. Like, even men in my book club are understanding their fathers better, you know?
Wow.
Like,
yeah.
Then there's women that are understanding their sons better. You know, I'm like having goosebumps, like the transformation they're having.
Me too.
They're having, like with their sons, and the healing, and like the misunderstanding between the mother and her son, because it's same. He's a man with the way a man thinks. And like, oh, it's just like, you know, we're like in tears. And of course our partners and our brothers, and there's women that have brothers, and like healing that relationship and understanding that they don't need to compete. And like, oh, and like, it's super, super juicy.
And the piece about women needing to compete, like, I think that's also been a part of feminism. Like, we can do everything ourselves. We don't need men. And in that journey, instead of, like, I feel like as we deny men, we're also denying ourselves. So, like, instead of leaning into our strengths, we are emulating men. Like, one great example of that is how I think it was the 80s where women were starting to enter the workforce more. And what was in style at that time? It was at least here in America, I don't know where it was with where all, because you mentioned your world travel, but at least here in America, it was the big shoulder pads. So it's like women were entering the workforce, but they were like kind of presenting as men with like these broad
Oh, wow,
shoulders.
that. Yeah, that's hilarious. That was a thing. And
That
that
was a
makes
thing.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
And there's this constant struggle against our like actual nature, our cyclical nature, to like be consistent every day, especially if you're
Mm-hmm.
in, an executive position, or even if you're just interested in self-development. Like, there's that big narrative of like, wake up at 5 a.m. every day.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Mm-hmm. And even the work hours, they're designed
yeah,
for men, not for women's cycles.
yeah, yeah. And then just like now switching the workplace narrative to like what it must be like for men. If they're cut off from their emotions from such a young age, what kind of leadership are they creating even between themselves? Like, are they really seeing each other? Are they really connecting in their friendships, in their like, colleague relationships? Are they really communicating? Like, you mentioned that miscommunication between men and women, but I'm sure there's also miscommunication between men. And something that I've seen a lot, and I don't know if it's just, my limited experience because I haven't traveled as much as you, is that I've seen a lot of men who struggle with friendship, that they struggle to have friendships with other men, and that it seems to be easier for women. I don't know if that's just my limited experience, but I'm curious if you've noticed that or if you've seen something different.
Yeah, there's different cultures have different things. They can speak from both Russian
Mm,
culture and Australian culture. So Russian
mm-hmm.
culture is very, and I think it comes from the background and the spies and like communism and it's very intimate. Like your best friends are like your friends, and everyone else who an Australian would call a friend is an acquaintance. Yeah.
Mm,
Whereas in
mm-hmm.
Australia, the Russians would call them acquaintances, and I call them friends. And then I have my best friend,
Mm-hmm.
and then I have the acquaintances, but they're really far to be called that. In terms of men friendships, I think, yeah, I don't know much about. I don't have that many. Like I'm in a very different, like non-stereotypical communities these days. But with
Mm-hmm.
Australia, I know they were very shallow. In Australia, it's
Mm,
all about like making fun of each other. It's like very sarcastic. I think people had to get really drunk or really high to actually open up. And I think men
mm,
found it easier to open up to women. And then there's a huge suicide rate within men. Like there's a huge thing
yes.
because they can't talk about their emotions. They can't talk
Yeah.
about anything. They don't know how to. They can't express them. And then they just kill themselves because they're like, well, and no one knows. And everyone's like, oh, but they were so happy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's, no one bats an eye when a woman calls her best friend sobbing. But like if someone in a male body did the same thing, people would be like, are you
I
okay?
even know women saying, I want my man to be more vulnerable. And then when the man is crying, the woman is rejecting him because they can't, they're like,
Yeah.
oh, that's not manly.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Shit. That's a problem.
That's a problem. That's a
That's a
problem.
problem. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think though, like we're slowly opening up space for that to shift because we have been, healing. If you look at the last like 10 years, there's been so much healing with women in their own feminine energy. And I feel like I've always thought that as we heal our feminine energy, we can be kind of like, you know, birthers or doulas or mothers to hold a new reality for men. Because I do think women are really good at leadership and kind of like paving a way of like, you know, it can be like this too. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to hold everything in.
Yeah. And like, as I said, I'm in very different circles. So in my circles, men are really open and they're sharing and they're really heart centered, you know? So yeah, I can definitely say things. I'm seeing them shifting, and sometimes I forget that that's not the case. And I'm also a big believer that we are the change that we want to see in the world. And that if we walk and speak from vulnerability and authenticity and then hold space, I find that people are always like, they're so open and willing to share. And I've been in the self-development industry, like community, since I was 16, you know, and I've seen people just really being vulnerable. Like if you're in that space, like things are happening. If you're not in that space, then a very different reality. But I want to talk a little bit more about the things that changed for me around loving men and healing this relationship. And because I think like what we're just talking about now is like women freaking out, you know, and it's like, whoa, that's a problem. There's so many other things, and let's bring it to the light. Let's talk a little bit about it to bring people to reflect, right? On like, oh, where am I doing this? So, or not, but yeah, it's
let's
available.
do it. I'm down.
So the other thing that was really transformational for me, and I think Wakanda already started talking about this, like the feminine essence that has been forgotten and kind of like we've given it up or even sold out on it to kind of fit in, right? And that's the human nature, to try and fit in. So we're like, okay, I'll give up a part of me, I'll fragment a part of me to be accepted and to be, you know. And I know women in the workforce had to do that, especially in higher ranks, like you said, giving up that female leadership for the masculine and replicating that. And so my journey kind of, and I work really intuitively, and I really come from a background of like deeply like non-binary belief, and something like pushed me into polarity work, which for me used to be like outdated because everyone told me like it's so outdated.
The internet's like, nope.
Too hot. The topic is too hot. It's like when that happens, it's too hot. It's where did it cut off for you?
So it cut off for me when we were talking about how can we reflect and see how we are doing, like playing into this narrative of like men can't feel.
And then we were talking about polarity, and then I said I started to connect with my essence. Is that like you heard that part?
Yeah, I heard the part of you hearing that polarity was outdated, but that you were like pushed to explore it.
Yeah.
That was where we cut off.
Okay, great. Okay, great. So I'll start from that. And I think this is very powerful concept for like heteronormative black couples. Yeah, like men, women, like this is the jam. Like if you're a woman and you want a man, like this is great. If not, then there's always polarity, but this might not resonate so much. And with everything, I'm like, just try it on. If it calls to you, try it on. If you don't like it, leave it. Nothing is the truth. We're such unique beings. But for me, yeah, as I said, something called me in. And then somehow I ended up in this like house where everyone, like, I had a friend who loved polarity work, like in this retreat. She was my roommate and she would talk to me about it all the time. And then we hung out in Bali a lot. And then I ended up in Holland. We're in the house where everyone was into it. And like I met this man that's been practicing polarity with his wife of 10 years. And he was like, our sex is the hottest it's ever been. Our relationship is the best it's ever been, and my financial situation is the best it's ever been. And I was like, wait, what? You know, and that's a big deal, right? That's a big deal for people because, like,
yeah, especially a 10-year long relationship. Yeah.
And this is not some guru. He's not like, I'm a polarity coach. He's just a normal man that was just sitting with me on a couch one day and talking about this. And for me, I just started to dabble in it. Yeah, I was like, okay, I'll practice being in my feminine and receive and just receive. And love men, not hate them. Put down my sword of needing to emasculate them and just listen to them. Listen to them and view them and just say, like, maybe there's a good reason for whatever they're doing, instead of being like, no. And the world shifted, right? Men just by being kind, they just want to give. Yeah. And there's this, so in the polarity, there's this belief that women are like receiving, they're beautiful, they're just there. And men that do this work, I just listen to them. I'm like, are you for real? Like, you believe this? Like, I can be this? Their belief, and this is the polarity work, is that like women, they do not see their value that they add. All they have to do is just be themselves. Like, they don't have to do anything. They just have to be them. And receive. And men, they want to provide. They want to lead. Like, and women, like, they just need to receive that and love their man. Yeah. And I'm like, what? Like, that can be a reality? And he shared with me like his story of his partner, and this was my most mind-blowing thing, because with him, he worked a lot. He used to work a lot, and then his partner didn't so much, and he was trying to make her work a lot. And then she was like, I'm not doing that. That's like not my essence. So then he started to join her in working less, but then he started to earn more. And then
That's
like
awesome.
their relationship was getting really good, and he was getting the validation, and she was loving him for him, and he wanted to rise up. And eventually, like, they got to a point where he was working less and less, making more and more, to a point where he doesn't have to work anymore. It's like this magic. This is like a magic story of polarity.
Wow.
But it just shows, like, that you can be in this like feminine, you don't need to control and take care of anything. You can release and receive. Yeah. And like allow, and this is a big chapter in the book about allowing to be provided for, not because you cannot do it yourself, but because you are allowing.
Yeah. And that's so hard to do when you've been raised to be an independent woman, like what we were talking about before. And for me, I'm German, and they like really teach you to be independent in Germany and to be productive. And like the culture is very much like you make your own money, you handle your money. And yeah, I'm currently in that practice of like allowing myself to receive from my husband. Like, he makes most of the money currently, and it's so hard to receive it because I'm not used to it. Up until the pandemic, like, I've never I was gonna say relied, but it's like I've never been provided for in this kind of way before. I've always been the one to like provide for myself. So like this receiving thing is so, I can see how it's so life-changing, because it's so difficult to let go of that control and to know that like it's kind of like that saying of like jump and the net will catch you. Like, you just have to trust that it's okay and that you're enough as you are.
Yeah, and men want to be needed. They want to be provided.
Yeah.
They want to be useful. And imagine being in a society where it was like, no, you're not needed. You're not useful. I can do it all myself. And I so resonate with you, Celia, because my mom, single mom, my grandma, single mom, very powerful, independent auntie that brought us over to Australia. So really independent, strong women, like, I have so much evidence for I don't need a man, it's like, and I need to prove that, right? It's like we need to prove that we don't need. And that's very emasculating to men. That is very emasculating and painful. And there's many things that we do that are very emasculating and painful. Yeah. And that's why there's this like kind of there's this building of resentment and pain in relationships, even in relationships, because people are still in relationship not understanding each other. And this, and I invite all the listeners, to, if you're a woman and you want to just play with this and allow yourself to receive, just say yes to everything. Say yes to someone trying to open the door for you, like help you with the bag, help you get something off the shelf. Like, just play with it, because me stepping into my goddess, my feminine, it led me to like an all expenses, like paid trip to Holland, where I was treated like a total goddess, like everything taken care of, like and it wasn't like fancy restaurants, like workshops, baths, spas, ecstatic dances, like dinners. We went to even like a sex shop, bought all these toys, like gifts, and like sexually provided, like all these things, to a point where I was like, oh, I understand when there's a capacity, where people hit capacity and then they try to self-sabotage and like push it away, or like justify that they're unworthy or not good enough, or need to step in and start doing things because they're like, oh, I'm at capacity that is like too much of how much I can receive. And I was like, oh, I see how people push it away.
Yeah. I like wonder how much of that pushing away is like, oh, this is like, if I receive more than this, that it'll lead to maybe how we have felt with our fathers. Because I'm sure this is all tied to, like you mentioned earlier, our relationship with our fathers, or even absence of the fathers, because that's our first relationship with men, or first example of a man. Yeah.
For me, I had this narrative where if I receive from men, I will owe them something. So that's why I didn't want to receive anything, because I was like, I do not want to owe anyone anything. Like, no, thank you. It didn't feel unconditional, and I didn't understand that they had a desire and need, and it just brought them joy that I would receive it, and I didn't need to go and do something in exchange.
Yes, I so relate to that, because my mom got remarried when I was 2 or 3, and my stepdad is from Pakistan, and in his culture, like the wives do everything for the men, and it's like you're completely controlled in that culture, and what you're receiving from your husband is, like a place to live, family, all expenses paid, but then like you owe them taking care of the house, taking care, like doing all those like typical gender roles. Yeah, so for me, I always like, that was my that was my kind of like origin, where I'm like, okay, I gotta be like independent and on my own, because I don't want to owe a man anything. Yeah, so I can so relate to what you just shared.
I love your example. It's such a good segue into what I want to talk about. I wasn't going to talk about it, but now I'm like, yes, this is such a good example, because it's really interesting conversation, especially for the people who have read Queen's Code, or who are like questioning this, because so once I was so full in this time in Holland. This was the first time I was so provided for, like, even the way he like helped me cross the road, like it was like carried all my things, like
That sounds
covered
so
in bags.
nice.
Yeah, it was
Sounds
just
so
like
nice.
it was like planned everything. I remember he was like, don't worry baby, everything's taken care of, like you don't have to think about anything. I was so full that I just wanted to serve. Like I wanted to like help him put his shoes on. I wanted to like help him, like I wanted to cook for him. I wanted to clean. I was like, and it turned me on. I've never had that.
Yeah.
I even like
Yeah,
I
it's
was
coming
like,
from a place of like desire and devotion, rather than like, I have to do this. Oh, I love that.
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And this is something I brought to my conversation with this guy who's been in the thing for 10 years, because I was like, okay, so I feel guilty AF right now. I'm so confused because am I setting feminism back like 50 years because I want to be a housewife being provided by a man and I just want to cook and take care of the home? Like, what is happening in my mind, right? Let's talk about this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And because I'm like, that skeptical brain is always going to be like, but this is, yeah. And I brought it to
Yeah.
him, and we discussed it, we debated this, we like dissected it, because what you talk about, there is like layers to your example, right? That thing that happened with your mom and her new husband, that could have come from this like love and devotion, right? But we also talked about this in the olden day, right? It came out of fear and survival, right? It didn't come from like love and devotion. It came from fear, survival, and control. Sometimes, maybe some of it did come from like love and devotion. We don't know. But this is something that me and Niels, this is the man that I interviewed, came to a conclusion, like, that there's a new paradigm. Like, feminism is like outdated. It was great, but now we need to come back to love and devotion. And this polarity thing only works if you come from love and devotion, right? Not manipulation. Because for women, manipulation is the wound. For men, it's control, right? Because both dynamics could go into the shadow, and the man can be controlling because I bring all the money, I'm the provider, I boss you around. Yeah, and the woman, she can manipulate because she has her sexual powers, and she's like, yeah, you think you got control, but I'm gonna withhold, I'm gonna emasculate, I'm gonna manipulate, right? And that's from fear. When it's from love, it creates this like DNA spiral of like, I'm providing for you because I love you. And then the woman, it's like, I'm receiving and I feel the love and I feel so full and I'm serving you because I love you. And like, you know, that the different, that's a different energy. And I just really
Yes.
love that you brought that example, because it was something that I always used to see, like in that negative, like old school way, and where feminism is like, no, we need equality and we need whatever, go to work and have our own money so then we don't have to be someone's slave.
Yeah. And sometimes that is like all about perspective as well. Like, you know how I mentioned that right now is the first time in my life where I'm being provided for in the way that I am, and that it's been difficult for me to receive that. So up until a couple of months ago, I would really resent that I was the one doing all the housework. But my husband went away on a work trip, and while he was gone, I happened to be in the area of his workplace that's here where we live around rush hour. So I experienced the drive home from where he works. And I live in Los Angeles, where the traffic is absolutely horrendous. And we live 40 miles away from his job. So it took me like 2 hours to get home. And just having that realization of like, he does this 10 times a week, twice a day, Monday through Friday. And the second part was like learning a little bit more, you know, with business and self-development, I love to learn. And while he was gone, I was learning a little bit about like computer science, just to learn that like mindset of like solving problems. I think that's very helpful, whether you're in computer science or you're just a business owner. And that also gave me perspective, because he works in STEM. It gave me this perspective of like, he works in a profession that is not like coaching, where there can be, you know, creativity and all these different answers. Like, no, there's one answer, and that answer must be correct. Otherwise, the thing does not work. And ever since those two things happened, he asked me like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was like, hey, you used to like really get like upset. Like we would argue about, you know, the housework, and now you do like everything. What happened? And what happened was, you know, the perspective shift made me want to do all the things. Like I get a lot of joy in like keeping the house and our environment looking great, cooking dinners and like doing the things at home. Like I I see that as like, this is my part in the puzzle. Like, we are like that DNA spiral, like that's my side of the spiral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel really touched by that share. Yeah, thank you for sharing it. And yeah, it just shows empathy, you know, like you put yourself in his shoes. And that's like the magic of understanding men. But also, like,
Yes.
this is why I'm loving my book club, because the men in the book club are understanding women. And
Yes.
we don't understand each other. And everyone's talking
Yeah.
about it. Like, oh, yeah. Oh, now I get why she thinks this way. Or now I get why he thinks that way. Oh my God, now I can
Yeah.
understand better. Oh, it makes sense. It makes me feel better. And I love that your husband like noticed that, you know, like he
Yes,
had that
right?
awareness.
He's the best.
Right? It's like, wow, he's so present, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
oh, so yeah, really touched by your story.
Yeah,
Good
he's super present. He's definitely cut from the cloth of he came from a household where he was told it was okay to cry. So
stuff.
when we first got together, like he really helped me with my emotional intelligence and my own
Mm.
feminine energy, because I feel like he is a lot better than that than me. And he is really excited that we're having this conversation right now. Like, he knows what we're talking about, and he's like, "Ooh, I can't wait to listen to that." Because it's like, yeah, because even though we're speaking in generalizations of how, men are typically told not to feel, there is a small number of men who are not told that at home. But because the world as a collective doesn't hold that it's okay for men to cry, the men that do feel and are comfortable with their emotions have a hard time out in the world. People
Yeah.
don't accept that. Or like you said, like when it comes up, people are like,
Yeah.
whoa. Yeah, so
Yeah.
he's really excited we're talking about this.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, when you shared that, it's everything, right? This is like why I was like, yeah, why I started this book club, to have a safe space to talk about conversations that society kind of suppresses, you know? It's
Yeah.
like, and I think of like why kids, you know, have special schools. Like special kids go to special schools where, you
Mm-hmm.
know, like the hippie schools, because otherwise they get bullied because they're just not the same.
Yeah,
They're not the
that's so
same. They're
true.
so different. And then the kids are freaking evil. Me and my mom were talking about this the other day. I'm like, why are kids so cruel? And she was like, because I'm wondering that, right? I'm a big believer, like everything is a learned behavior. I'm like, are their parents all evil? Like, why? And then I realized well, mom told me it's like when you're young, you're really in your primal instincts of survival, and it's
Ooh,
really like
yeah,
primal. You're like a primal, you're like an animal. And
yeah. Ooh,
yeah,
interesting.
mm-hmm. It's true, because it's just
And then
so
no space is given for that primal energy, so then it's taken out on their peers. Ooh, that makes a lot of
mm-hmm.
sense. Yeah. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's a lot. I won't go into that, as I don't want to segue from our beautiful conversation of loving men. And I guess like some practical things that people can do um, is to realize, yeah, to kind of have a check-in, like what is some subconscious beliefs that you run around of about men. So a great example it would be to write men are, like go journal men
Mm,
are, and just like free write whatever
yeah.
comes. Don't judge it, don't, and then read it and then look, because those are your subconscious beliefs, and then you're running them and you're projecting them. Yeah, and then you're not allowing magic. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Thanks for sharing that. So I have a couple of closing questions that I ask every guest at the end. And the first one is, what does self-love mean to you?
self-love is such a foundational like aspect of my work and my life. I'm like, oh my God, what doesn't it mean? What the first thing that dropped into my mind is deeper understanding of self, like really understanding of self and accepting every part of self, especially the parts that you judge and shame and hide the most, like those shadowy parts that have been suppressed and hidden away. It's bringing love, unconditional love to every part of you. And I think constantly looking for like where am I either like sucking a collective shame and shit and judgment and hatred and then projecting it onto me, yeah, or the world, yeah, and like bringing love, like tracking where am I hating myself now. Oh, there's this new trend to judge my ass. Oh, new trend, my wrinkles. New trend, my like flabby arms. Like, what are these trends that we're being like collectively funneled and just like reject them, reject them. And yeah, so understand self and accept yourself radically, and then do things for yourself, like a lot, like you're worthy and deserving, and give yourself the things you want. Stop like pushing away things. Stop like withholding things from yourself, and stop justifying that like you're victim and that you like can't have the thing. So finding evidence for why you can't have the thing you truly want.
And what makes you feel the most grounded?
Community of like-minded people where I can share myself fully and be reflected that I am not crazy, that I am normal, that I belong, that I am, yeah, accepted. It like really grounds me, like being around people that truly, truly see me and accept me for like my fully wildest, craziest self.
Yeah. I've asked about 50 people this question and no one has ever said community, and it sounds so grounding. Like that's the most grounding thing I've heard. I love it.
Thank you.
And then the last question is, what is your favorite part about being a woman?
Oh, I'm sorry. I have to share this. Okay. Wait, let me answer the question and then I'll share why I laugh so hard. Or maybe I should share the story and then I'll answer the question. Anyway, so
Okay,
doing my research of men, right? And the polarity work, and being in this house full of men obsessed with polarity work, and them explaining to me what it's like to be a woman, when they've embodied the woman and the feminine. And I remember like both of them, one of them is saying like, oh, I remember when I wore a dress and I got to be really in my feminine and life was so easy. I just got to be beautiful and just dance around. And then the other man was like, yeah, I was so in my feminine. Like I was just magnetizing things. Like anything I desired would just come to me, And
none of them had their periods. No cramps.
That's a different topic for another story, but I love my period, and if you like honor your cycle, you don't get cramps.
Yeah.
True. It's body's wisdom to
True.
stop and go in the cave and get really shamanic and powerful and potent. Anyway, but I remember the man being like, and I was like, wow, that's how you see women. And we like don't let ourselves be in our true essence of like just we're like, no, we have to compete with a man and be a mini man. And it's like, or you can just be a woman, yeah. And so I laughed at that because the first thing that came to me was yeah, like that. I love that. I love that about being a woman. It's not something that I've fully embodied yet. I didn't even know it was available to me because I've been so conditioned to be a mini man and to be prepared. Society prepared me to be a man. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
To act like a man, behave like a man, even not feel like a man, you know, like, so I lost a lot of myself. And I shaved my head. That was like a big thing for me. And recently, when I started embodying the goddess, I was like, I need my hair. I can't be a
Mm.
goddess with no hair. But then I was like, you know what? I am going to embody the goddess, and I'm going to be the best goddess I can be with the hair I have. And I look back at photos of me with really long hair, and I realized I was nowhere near a goddess. I was not a goddess with my long hair. I was just I was dead, you know. I wasn't in my essence. I wasn't in
Mm.
my beauty. I wasn't in my juiciness. I wasn't in this like birthright, you know. It was
Mm-hmm.
conditioned out of me because I was in fear. I was so scared to be sexualized. I was so scared, like, to be projected, to slut shame, like all these things that suppressed
Mm-hmm.
me. And that's what I
Mm-hmm.
love. This is what I love about being a woman, is that, yeah, I get to be soft and beautiful, and I'm like nature. I'm the embodiment of nature. I'm chaotic storm, you know, like torrential rain and a sunny day, like a peaceful sunset over like a still lake. You know, it's like all these facets that can change from one second to the other, and chaos and magic and manifestation and magnetism and receiving and pleasure. That's what I love about being a woman.
Mm. I love that. Yeah. And I love having, like, in a small way, witnessed, like, when I first came across you, you had your long hair and you had a workshop as a connection sibling. You had a workshop about applying the Vita method to money, and you had long hair. And, you know, now that you've shared that, like, I do feel like from the little piece I got of you then, because I know a workshop, like, we didn't sit and talk one on one, like, you do feel more self expressed without the long hair. And I feel like so many women can relate that, like, we feel like we need to have long hair to be beautiful. Like, there's so many things where it's like, even what you mentioned before about the man embodying their feminine, being in a dress. Like, who says a dress is just for women? Like, why does a dress, like, it's fabric. It's just fabric. Yeah, so I love that. I love that response.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can say a lot about the conditioning that we experience, right? The conditioning says that dresses are for women. The conditioning says that women should have long hair. You know, even my partner, my ex, couldn't accept me with my shaved head. He didn't find me attractive.
Mm,
You know,
yeah,
and it's like deep conditioning, and also preference. You know, some people don't like bald men, so it's a thing. Like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And what's, you know, there are cultures where men have really long hair and where men wear skirts. Like, that's normal for them. Okay, so we could talk forever, but for everyone that has tuned in, where can they find you? Where can they connect with you? Where can they find out about your work? Share all the things.
Okay. Yay. Well, I've been seeding my book club the whole time because it is just something that has been changing my life and everyone who has been participating in it. And for me, like, I work really intuitively, and I just allow like whatever the inspirational current that's pulsating through me, and what I'm seeing is missing in the world right now. And I'm always like, I love the realms of taboo, like sex, men, like that's why I know periods. I'm like, yes, I can talk for days about that. Money, like
Yes.
all these
Yes.
things. I'm like, I can tell you more. And right now, what I'm seeing that is missing is love for men, understanding men. And if you're a woman that would like to date a man, magnetize a man, or even like transform the relationship you're already in, or if you have a son, or if you want to transform your relation with your father, like, and our core, like, I'm a big believer that our soul contracts with our mother and our father. If you do not heal those two relationships, you will be projecting them non-stop into every person you meet, into your money, even your money, into your business, into everything, right? So, and I'm noticing that this work is so needed, and the work we're doing in the book club is just out of this world. So I'm going to invite you all. There's going to be a second round. It's for the book Queen's Code. You can read it yourself. Honestly, you can buy the book audio. But it is so profound. And men, if you're listening to this, please come. It's such a gift to have you in the space. But it's been such a healing space for everyone. And the big thing for me reading that book that was missing was community. It was ability to discuss these topics and to create like togetherness in transformation and implementation, actually, not just reading the book, because the book is so addictive. People finish it in a day. Yeah, but then it's implementing it, like having this weekly meeting where you're like talking about these topics, and then you go and do them, and then you're constantly thinking about them and integrating them. And this is why I'm running it again, because I'm like, I want to journey again. I'm like, I've only like reached the top layer of it, because there's so much and it's not natural. So there's resistance. I'm having so much resistance right now where we are in the book. I'm like, whoa, I never knew I had that much layers and trauma and all this ickiness. Yeah. So if you feel inspired from this conversation to dive deeper into polarity, deeper into understanding and loving men, come join my book club. I'm going to give Celia the link. It's like a little form, and you can share your expression of interest, and then I'll email you the next dates. Yeah. So that's a thing. You can follow me on Instagram, and I am Dasha Barsukova. So I'll also give that, because that's long.
I'll give the link.
Long and confusing. But there I share what's alive for me. It's all about inspiration. It's different topics of taboo. And our next theme, I don't know what's going to come first, the book club or this, but with the book club, there's a chapter on sex. And recently I listened to this podcast that talked about the lack of understanding in society around sex. And I love all things taboo. I love community. I love sharing circles. So I'm starting a group called The Truth About Sex, where we come and we're going to discuss different topics about sex and just have like an open conversation like we did here, like Celia does on all her other podcasts, but really creating a safe space where you can go and talk and be heard and learn about things and just like speak out. So I will give a link to that as well. And I'm also really active on Facebook. If you're a Facebooker, I have a huge following on there. So I will also give a link to that. I share lots of long form, like I write a lot. So that's what's alive. I have email lists and all of that, and I'll share all these things. But if you want more of community, if you want to like implement things, then join those little groups. And if you have any questions, feel free to slide into my DMs. Happy to share.
Yay. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.